Today's topic, 5 red flags we oftentimes confuse as real love, And I want to thank everyone who chimed in last night on the In Full Bloom with Facebook page. If you're not part of that In Full Bloom with Dr. Rose group on Facebook, please go in and join the group. Go in and join the group. Lots of stimulating conversation that we can have. Real talk also just joined in. But let's talk about the 5 red flags. There are more, but I want to talk about 5 specifically. 5 red flags that we oftentimes confuse as the real thing, as real love. We know the obvious red flags that we have, and I want to just share with you guys some of the obvious red flags many of you guys shared that you experienced in your life with relationships in general. Let me get to that point here. Let's see. So some of you shared some of your red flags. And again, like I said, these are obvious red flags that we come across for sure. Some folks said no relationship with their mom or siblings. Others indicated someone who's controlling and possessive. Glendora said when her family and the majority of her friends and family said no, she didn't listen. So these are some obvious red flags that we oftentimes will face in a budding new relationship that many of us recognize as red flags. But what about those red flags that aren't so obvious, that we don't recognize as readily as we do some of the ones I just shared with you? So the first red flag I want to discuss is the person starts discussing a future together way too soon. Now, the reason, and I've over the years, not just as a psychologist, but through my own personal experience, I've come to find out when people start doing that, discussing a future, sometimes as early as the first date or within a few weeks, it's because it's very difficult for people to operate outside of their true nature for long. So we've all heard the saying where people show up as their representative or they wear a mask or what have you. And that can only last because we all want to go back to operating in the manner that comes most natural for us. So a person who starts discussing a future way too soon is someone who knows that they can only keep up the act so long. So if they can get you to commit to something, be it let's move in together, be it let's get married. I've even heard instances, and I can remember dating where a guy after a few weeks was asking for me to have his baby. I mean, that is crazy. But it's obvious, again, when a person wants you to commit to something so very soon or starts talking about the future prematurely in a relationship, it's typically because that person knows that they can't keep that facade up for long. And they'll want to basically try to solidify or seal the deal quickly, before they rear their ugly heads. And because what they do know, and this is typical of women, oftentimes if you've invested that time and you've shared with your family and friends about this wonderful guy you've met, even when the red flags come up, sometimes you ignore them because you want to convince others that this is, the real thing. Divine says they can only keep up with that act for so long. Again, so true. Our true nature. And that's why it's so important that, within 6 months to a year, sometimes it can take a little longer. That's when you're seeing the true person show up, not their representative, not the mask. But again, in the beginning, it's just not untypical for a person to just show up with their best behavior. So again, the first red flag is a person starts to discuss a future way too soon. Oftentimes people consider that flattering. Oh, he's talking about marriage after 2 weeks. He must really be in love with me. Don't flatter yourself. That should be a red flag, and you may want to run, as the picture I put up on social media says. The second is the person keeps asking you if you have noticed any red flags. I remember dating someone who, every few weeks the question was, have you noticed any red flags yet? Have you noticed any red flags? Because their whole premise was they're an open book and they're, not going to hide anything from you, and you don't have to worry about discovering things that you didn't know about this person. So it was a regular practice for this person to ask me, have you noticed any red flags? And it soon became obvious that it was an attempt to make an effort to prove that they're really an open, honest guy. It was more of a defense mechanism because, again, this was a representative and they wanted to kind of misconstrue what they presented as being this open and honest guy with, again, wanting to just kind of keep it all under wraps until that true nature came out, The third is the person has no real interest, friends, or hobbies outside of you. So you may find that 5 calls a day, and I may be minimizing it because I've heard people who say that they've had calls, 20, 30 calls a day from a person. You may find that flattering or wanting to spend every weekend together with you flattering, but it may be a sign that that person has no real interest outside of you. And why that might be appealing and alluring in the beginning, when we all want to go back to business as usual, meaning, have this relationship and still proceed with our everyday life, and you want to go and do things with your friends, travel with your friends, or do things with your family, this person can very well have an issue with that if they don't have any outside passion or outside interest besides you, because you become their everything. And that's a hefty, hefty responsibility to put on someone's shoulders, to be everything to someone. So make sure, if you're going to have passion in a relationship, that person has to have passion outside of you also, or interest outside of you. Or, after, like I said, that 6 months to 1 year mark, you're going to start seeing something completely different. Now, this is a huge one here. And I remember years ago when I did a radio program and we discussed this, the host of the radio program was shocked because she was in a relationship where this is what she was hearing. And needless to say, that relationship did not last. But the family tells you that he or she is a different person with you. We've never seen him like this, or we've never seen her like this. Again, most of us will find that flattering because we want to, it feeds our ego. Oh, I'm the person to just make this person into someone that no one has ever seen before. But be wary, because what that means is that's an act, okay? I always look at, is a person's, who they're presenting themselves as, is it a state or is it a trait? A state is something that's temporary. A state is something that's only going to be short-lived, and a person cannot remain in that mode long term. A trait is just consistent. It's enduring, and you'll see it over time. And I see those hearts coming because I know some of you guys have experienced this. So when a person talks about, or their family, listen to a family, families, even through all the craziness they may say, there's some truth in there. So I always say, just analyze and weed out the information that may be beneficial to you. But if that family's telling you that he's a different person with you, or she's a different person with you, and they've never seen them that way, you should run and consider that a red flag. I can remember dating a guy, and these are not all the same guys, but they're, that's why I say dating. Dating is to collect data, not to just say, okay, I'm getting in there and it's for the long haul, because you may need to move on. But I can remember dating a guy that all of a sudden when we started dating, his family started inviting him to events. And he made the comment, he says, Odell says, playa. No, Odell, I'm not. No, I'm not. Not anymore. But his family, he made the comment that his family, since he'd been dating me, is inviting him to more events, more functions. And I found that interesting, but soon found out why, because the person was really an a-hole, and they were seeing a person they hadn't seen before, a nicer person, a gentler person, a kinder person when he was dating me, and that was someone that they wanted to have around them. But soon, again, state or trait, that true nature comes out, and you're able to see why he was banned from most family events, quite honestly. So as flattering as it may be for someone to tell you, oh, he's a different person with you and we've never seen him like this before, you may want to investigate a little bit longer and see just what the true story behind that is. And the fifth is the person wants to plan everything, even your wardrobes. One of the persons in the In Full Bloom with Dr. Rose group mentioned that last night. And it's so interesting because I will see that with some individuals. And this can be male or female, because I know males and females who's done this. They want to plan everything. I had a student years ago when I taught, and controlling devices, yeah. So I taught college as an adjunct professor for about 11 years. And I can remember a student coming in, and she had just gotten engaged. And her husband, or soon-to-be husband, decided he was going to plan the entire wedding. She had no say in it. He said it was a secret. It was to surprise her. She didn't even pick out the dress. He picked out the dress for her. Needless to say, years later, when I ran into her, the marriage had dissolved. But it's definitely a sign of control. They'll say it's scary. That is scary. And I oftentimes hear people saying, you know, let's even talk about modern day, you know, pop culture, where those of you who may follow the Kardashians, even if you don't follow, you can't help but hearing about them. They're always in the news, where they talk about when Kim started dating Kanye and he went in and just got rid of her whole wardrobe and decided to dress her. You have to see that as an indication that this person is trying to create you to be someone that fits what their desires are, you know, as opposed to allowing you to be who you are. So as flattering as it will be, and I'm not saying, you know, don't accept gifts, don't accept an outfit, or don't accept a trip that's planned for you. But grooming, Divine, that is so true. That's called grooming behavior. Okay, grooming behavior, meaning I'm going to groom you or mold you into the person I want you to be, because I'm not completely satisfied with who you present to me today. So be very careful of that. And those were the 5 things there. The person starts discussing a future together way too soon. Dated someone who the second date was talking about how if we pooled our incomes together, we could just live this great life. And it was like, okay, I'm running out of here. And seriously hid from that person as long as I could. And the person keeps asking if you've noticed any red flags. That's number 2. The person has no real interest, passions, or friends outside of you. Their family tells you that the person's a different person. We've never seen him like this with you. And the person wants to plan everything, even your wardrobe, things you should not consider as flattering, but as red flags. And lastly, and this came up, and I know this makes 6, but I wanted to point this out as well. A person who just really considers themselves the victim in all their past relationships, and they're not able to share with you what it is that they learned about themselves, the mistakes they've made in past relationships. If it's all about how they were victimized and how they were wrong, that's a red flag. That's someone who has no real insight into self and has not really had the opportunity to grow from dating, because that's one of the things that dating does. The majority of relationships we get in life are not intended to last forever. That's the truth. But it's intended to give us data, give us information and data, not only about people, but about ourselves. So if you meet someone who's not able to grasp and communicate what it is they learned about themselves, how they've grown from past relationships, then that's indeed a red flag. So those are the 5 plus a bonus one, things that you should look out for, red flags that sometimes we may confuse as real love. You know, share the information. I'll post this broadcast up on my social media sites, and you may want to share with friends and family that you love, because again, relationships are the hallmark of life. And the more we know, the more informed we are, the more successful we can be in just gaining what we need to gain out of relationships, even if it doesn't work. And thanks a lot, Odell. Thanks for joining us from Texarkana. And thank you guys on the line, and thank you guys on Periscope for joining me as well. Be sure to join the In Full Bloom with Dr. Rose page, and follow me on YouTube. I put all these and upload all these videos on my YouTube channel as well. So you guys get out there, have a great Tuesday, and live your life in full bloom. Bye-bye.